there is what's called Eiver min Hachai. Till now we spoke about Tuma of a mace. Now there is also such a thing, a Tuma of a Chai. What happens, for example, if you have a kohen that chas v'shalom unfortunately has to go through an amputation and they have to cut off a limb of a kohen. So what's important to know, the Mishnah in Olay says that Eiver min Hachai is mitame only if it has basar, atzomois, vegidim. You have to have all three of them in order to be mitame. So if you have an Eiver min Hachai, for example, a spleen or a kidney that is taken out of a chai, that is not mitame. What is mitame? That is only an Eiver min Hachai, like for example, like I said, a leg or a hand or a finger that is amputate and cut off. The Shulchan Aruch in Hilchos Avelus, Yoredei Siban Shin Samech Tef Sif Aleph Paskins, Hakohen Muzal Shelo Yitame B'Meis, V'lo lekol tumoy sapol shois mimenu, that is regarding a mace, V'lo legoyle, v'lo ledoivek, V'lo le'ever min Hachai, and not to an Eiver min Hachai, she'ein ber kedei lalo yisaru ko ibo yom mechubo, if it would be alive, it wouldn't heal. That is an Eiver min Hachai, that a kohen is not allowed to be mitama. There is a chumrah to Tumas Eiver upon Tumas mace, and that is that a kohen could be mitame to one of the Shiva Kroivim if there is Tumas mace. But for an Eiver, he cannot be mitame. Because of that, we have to understand that if a kohen himself is in an operating room, and that in a hospital that does according to halakha, that is a concern, that if a kohen is amputated a leg or something like that, they cut off a leg from a kohen, so somebody has to take out that limb right away from the room in order to save the kohen from the Tumas Eiver min Hachai. In the system, as I said before, they're right away going to write Azara lekoyanim, but that will be a very short Azara lekoyanim because that would go very quickly to the morgue. They will slice off something from it in order to send it to pathology if needed, according to the doctor's opinion. But again, in pathology, that will be a small piece, and that is not going to be considered Eiver min Hachai. What is considered an Eiver min Hachai? A finger, a leg, a hand. That would be anything from like the Mishnah in Olei Perak Aleph Mishnah Ches says. What would be a kohen that has a finger? I'll give you an example. A kohen that his finger was cut off. This is a very interesting question. This is now the kohen has a finger that is cut off, and let's say it's possible to reattach the finger to his body. This is it's one of the shilas that the poskim deal with. There's a famous Noide B'Yehuda Tanina Simin Reish Tes that says he deals with a totally different question. He's talking about a kohen that had a limb that was removed, and he wants to keep the limb in order to people should have rachmanis on him, not for a medical reason. And he uses a lashon there. The Noide B'Yehuda says ve'ivarei atzmo ve'ivarei ish zar, limbs of a person or somebody else, din echad lohem, it's the same halacha she'en hakohen rashai li'itom elohem. So one could not be mitamet to his own limb once it's detached from his body. So that is a halacha that we learn from the Noida B'Yehuda. The poskim, when they talk about attaching back to the person a limb, so they talk about a few questions. First of all, we talk about Tumas Maso, you're carrying the limb. You're talking about Tumas Mago, you're touching it. So let's say you don't touch it with your hands, you touch it with something else, that can help. But the main thing is also a oil. The heter that's brought in the Poskim is the heter like we have in Hilchos Shabbos, sakonas Eiver. Mishum sakonas Eiver. And I want to explain. Do we say pikuach nefesh doiche kol haTorah? We'll say also pikuach nefesh doiche also Tumas Kohanim. That is clear. There's no shaila. Even though it's interesting that we have the Gemara in Maseches Bava Metzia Daf Kuf Yud Beis, where the Gemara says there that Eliyahu was nitma to the Ben Almona, and he was mechaye the Ben Almona. Tosfos asked the question: how could Eliyahu go and do tchias hamesim to the Ben Almona? The Gemara Tosfos asked, don't we say that Eliyahu's a Pinchas and Pinchas was a Kohen? So if he's a Kohen, he's not allowed to be mitamel hamesim. So he went in the same room and he touched the Ben Almana. How could you say that? So Tosfos says, Borur lo sheyechayeu lekacho yomutar mishum pikuach nefesh. Tosfos says, since it was clear to Eliyahu that he would be able to do tchias hamesim to this child, therefore it's considered to be pikuach, not of a base, pikuach nefesh, and that is a big chiddush. So we see from here that pikuach nefesh doiche kol haTorah kula would be also regarding tumas meis. So the question is now, when we talk about an Eiver, you have a shaila of sakonas Eiver. That would have a din of pikuach nefesh. That is a big machloikes in the Gemara in Avodah Zarah Daf Chof Ches Amud Beis. Omar Rav Zutra bar Turvi Omar Rav Ayin shemordo. You have a swollen eye. Mutar lekoichla, you're allowed to smear on the eye, to put on the eye cream, and that is a shchika samemonim on Shabbos. You're allowed to do that. The Rishonim there is a machlokes in the Rishonim. What's the heter on the eye? Is the heter because the eye is connected to the rest of the body, and therefore that is considered to be a pikuach nefesh? Or we say that that even though there isn't a pikuach nefesh and it's not connected to the rest of the body and it's not endangering the rest of the body, but it's a sakana for an Eiver, and that is also mutter. The Shulchan Aruch in Orach Chaim, Simin Shin Chav Ches Paskins in Halacha Tes Paskins Halacha, Sakanas Ayin Mechalelin Es HaShabbos. But in Seif Yud Zayin, the Shulchan Aruch Paskin, Sakonas Eiver is not considered to be a pikuach nefesh. So regarding us, the question, a kohen, we have to know that the Pri Megadim there in Ois Zayin in Mishbetzos says, only regarding Shabbos we paskin that that Sakonas Eiver would not be considered pikuach nefesh, and therefore we would be matter only surim derabanan. Aval shari surim bein onsu ubein bichdei leisrapois. But the rest of the surim besides Shabbos, if we have to heal, mutar laver al isur kedei laser isken, you're allowed to be over an isur for sakonas Eiver if it's not a question of Shabbos. So therefore, a kohen would be allowed to be metame for his own finger, and he would allow to carry it and to go to the hospital to make sure that it's sewed back. The Igroi Smoishe in Yoredei Chelik Aleph Simin Reish Lamed and the Tzitz Eliezer in Chelik Yudalid Simin Ayin Ches write that in certain cases that would be allowed, and it's a long tshuvis that they go through. We're not going to go through everything, but what one of the end svara that Ramosha writes and the Tzitz Eliezer also writes that since the finger is sewed to the body and eventually it's going to heal, so it's batel to the guf. And since the sewing is the stitches that we do is in order to bring it to life, so it's batel to the guf, even though now it still didn't heal. That is the svara regarding that. That is clear that after the limb is part of the body, so for sure it's not metame, and it could be part of it, and it's not considered to be an Eiver medulda.